Rangers have got a period of exclusivity that would allow them to trigger an option to buy Cerny for a designated fee of 5.5 million. Now, given the amount of interest that's around Vaclav Cerny right now because of the standard of his performances and his contribution, I think that Wolfsburg might be hoping that Rangers can't get to that fee. I think Rangers would need to match it at some point in May, mid-May, we think, or certainly declare their intention to make the deal happen, to finance it, which means there's not a great deal of time left. What's interesting is that there are now somewhere between 8 and 10 teams that have made contact, either with Cerny's agents or with Wolfsburg, to express an interest. And obviously, if Rangers don't conclude that deal at £5.5 million, he would then, become available on the market and on the open market. And I think Wolfsburg are sitting rubbing their hands, thinking, do you know what? We might have gone a bit low here. I think they could double that fee if it became a bidding war. And there does seem to be, a significant amount of interest in him, as you could well imagine. I mean, I think he was man of the match there for the Czech Republic last night. Scored one great goal, an assist. Look, I think it was only Gibraltar they were playing against, so it's hardly top end stuff. But you can see from the level of his performances that he's catching people's eyes. There's no doubt about it. Now the question is, I think, Andy, I don't know about you, I rather suspect no takeover, no Cerny. This Rangers board, in its current form, wouldn't be able to finance that, even if it's what they consider to be a relatively, reasonably priced deal at £5.5 million. So the question now is, does Andrew Kavanagh, we think that this will all be completed by April, doesn't give you a load of time, and I think that the Americans are aware of this contractual situation, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens next, because I think the kind of much heralded player trading model, it's not really spending £5.5 million on a guy at 27. I think Rangers would rather spend 3.5 on a couple of guys at 21, 22, 23. So it's a sort of break-in with the model. But I look at Cerny and I think for £5.5 million, it's one thing having this great idea about bringing in through young talent, buying low, selling high, bringing them in from the academy. But I don't think that works unless you've got experienced players at a good age around about the team. Because what are people looking to buy? They're looking to buy winners. And if you've got a guy like Cerny, he teaches good lessons. Apparently he's a real good influence around the training ground. So I'd be fascinated. I think with the amount of money that that should be made available to the club this summer following the takeover, I think £5.5 million is certainly an achievable deal, and I think it's one that Rangers should be looking to do. But I don't think it can happen without the say-so of the Americans. So that's going to be an interesting one.
What do you think, Andy? Would you 5.5 million in the modern game for a guy who's got 17 goals and 8 assists this season? I think it's pretty reasonable.
I think, as bad as this season has been for Rangers and for Rangers fans, I think you have to ask, how bleak would it be without Vaclav Cerny and, as you say, those 17 goals and handful of assists? It could be an awful lot worse, that's for sure. So for me, I think at the early outset of his time, I wasn't clear that it would be something that they would pursue. I think you think back to some of the big misses he had. He missed a big chance against Malmo. He missed a huge one against Lyon early doors.
That's right.
That could have put Rangers ahead on the night. And at that point, you're thinking this is a guy that's maybe not able to cope with the pressure of playing at a club as intense as Rangers. And what impressed me about him was it was him himself who came out into a post-match press conference a couple of weeks after those they were only about a week or so apart, those two misses. I think there's another one in there as well, and he basically held his hands up and said it's not been good enough, and I need to improve, and I need to get better, and listen, as I say, it has been a difficult season, a really underwhelming, really disappointing season for Rangers fans at times. But I think he's one guy who can, on the whole, hold his head up high. He's done terrifically well. And I think now you've got to say, if you could surround him with better players, as I imagine the hope will be with this new takeover coming in, is that I think he's a guy who can, his worth would only, soar. So, not just financially, but in terms of his value to the team, I think he would become a much bigger influence, a much more dangerous weapon if you could have the type of players, type of guys that can make space from you. We've seen, he's a bit of a one-trick pony in a sense. It's just that cuts in off the right-hand side, fakes on his to go down on his right foot, comes in on his left and takes a shot. It's amazing how often he gets away with it, but it's, he's very effective at it. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, in terms of the financial output that Keith's talking about there, I think this can only be done with the 49ers help and Andrew Cavanagh's help, because you've got to think, £5.5 million to spend, that might be Rangers' entire transfer budget for the summer. At the best of times, but are they really going to spend it all on one player? And then you've got to consider they've already committed themselves to spending, was it £4.5 million for Oscar Cortez? This is a club that doesn't have £10 million.
I'd be getting the lawyers all over that one, Andrew.
So, this is a club that doesn't have £10 million to spend on transfers at the minute. So something has to happen for them if they're going to compete. And obviously, as we've been reporting on these last few weeks, it's looking like it's going to be the 49ers and Andrew Cavanagh, and I think the club would hope it would be, obviously done before the end of the season to allow them to get a new manager in place, to allow them to start making plans. But time is marching on. Things need to be getting organised. There's going to be big European qualifiers. We saw what happened when the club wasn't ready for last year's Champions League qualifiers and how costly that was financially to the club. So this is something that has to be as quickly as possible on and off the pitch.
But when you think, Andy, about, every transfer has an element of risk attached to it, and especially, when you're spending sums like that, you're thinking, right, we've done all the homework that we can do. We think this will work out, but you've got a guy there at 5.5 that is proven that he can wear the shirt, that's proven that he can turn up for the big events. That's his goals against Fenerbahce, or the goal against Fenerbahce, his contribution in the recent kind of Old Firm games. That's as close to a tried and tested bit of business as you could possibly hope to achieve. Now, you could go and spend that 5.5 million elsewhere, and you're effectively taking a punt. Can this guy come in? Will he blood in? Will he like the city? Will he like the environment? Will he cope with the intensity? All these question marks that are always accompanied with anybody that arrives at either Celtic or Rangers. Cerny's proven over this period that he thrives on it. I think if he's available, and I genuinely, I think Wolfsburg are sitting there thinking they're hoping that Rangers don't meet this deadline, because if they don't, I think that they genuinely think it's achievable to get north of £10 million for him.